Hello, everyone. Welcome to the November meeting of the Upper Salford Township Historical Society. It's our last one for 2021, and we had a very successful year. So thank you all for coming to this meeting and for the meetings that you did come to. Before we start with our main speakers, I would like to thank Pastor Van Arsdale and the congregation of the Tabor Church for allowing us to meet here tonight. There's quite a crowd, and we knew that was going to be that way, and we would have been really squashed at the Township Building. So thank you very much for welcoming us in. Thank all of you for coming as well. There's a couple of announcements that I have. Upcoming events, there's a tree lighting at the Township Park on December 5th. There is a December 18th at the Old Goshenhoppen Church is the Wreaths Across America. There's information about that out on the table. Next year, our fire company in Upper Salford will be celebrating their 75th anniversary. So on May 14th, there will be a community celebration at the firehouse, and there's lots more information coming out about that. And next year also is the 25th anniversary of the Upper Salford Park. So the Parks Department is working on something for that. So those are things to look forward to. We are going to be planning our meetings for next year starting in January. There's a suggestion box on the table outside there. If you have any suggestions for topics, presenters, if you're wondering about something, let us know and we'll try to accommodate that. Right now, I would like to introduce you to our speakers.
I'm not part of the Rahmer family, but I'm just going to give you a little bit of my history of the Rahmer family from when I grew up. His grandparents lived a couple doors down the street from where I lived, and he had an aunt that was a couple years older than I, but she was one of the few girls in town. There weren't many girls. We were loaded with fellas, but not many girls in town. So I would be down there a lot, and his grandmother, Bertha, used to make the best Fastnacks. They were homemade potato donuts on Fastnac Day, and they were to die for. They were delicious. His grandmom also used to sew. She used to make dress sashes for, we used to call it Mommy Dots, but it was Cinderella frock in Red Hill. And that sewing machine would zip through those belt loops or sashes like you can't believe. And she would work them. She'd get bundles every week. And I used to love to watch her. She just zipped through them. It was really neat. And of course, his grandfather, I guess today you would have called him a general contractor, Luther. He was a plumber, and he also was involved or did the design and building of the fire company, which was across the street, catty corner a little bit from where they lived. And Fritzy is is lucky enough to have one of his aunts here. Helen Rahmer is here. She was married to Earl Rahmer, one of Fred's uncles, so she is a young 90-something, and she's sitting over here in the pew, and she's still getting around good, so that's a good thing. So I will turn it over now to Debbie, and thank you everyone for coming.
That was great, thank you. Yes, I am Debbie Rahmer, and this is a little overwhelming, but I'll do the best I can. My husband will get into how the Rahmer family got started into racing, but I'm here to just kind of go over the stats of my husband and the boys. It's funny that you would call him Fritzy. I mean, I only know my husband as Fritz. He is, and how he has always been in the race world, Fast Freddie Rahmer, but I've never called him Fred in my life. But I do have autograph cards out in the hall, and I do have his stats. His stats are remarkable, and there's no one else out in central Pennsylvania that has the stats that he has. And it's very noteworthy. I'm very proud of him, and I'm most proud of our children. So he would never get up here and tell you about his career stats, so that's what I'm here for. When he did start racing in 1978, he ran modifieds, and he only raced modifieds for 5 years. And in those 5 years, he has 7 championships and close to 100 wins. 45 wins at Grandview Speedway in 5 years. Some people go their entire career and have 45 wins. He transitioned into sprint car racing in 1986. He went full-time, and he'll explain that transition and how he got involved into sprint cars. While he was racing, he was also working full-time. He didn't go full-time racing, meaning as his full-time job, until the year that the triplets were born in 1996. He was racing for Al Hamilton that year. It was his first year with Al, and I was thrilled that he was going to be a full-time racer because he was there if I needed him for the kids. My cousin did come in and take care of the kids, and I went back to work after 8 months. And I think we did a pretty good job. So after he went into sprint car racing, I do have some of his stats here, and I won't read them all, but I'll read the ones that are most important. He is the all-time feature winner in Central Pennsylvania. He is the all-time leading feature winner at Lincoln Speedway with 169 wins just at Lincoln Speedway. His career wins in sprint cars are, let's see, I have that here somewhere, 420 sprint car wins and 519 career wins. He has 28 sprint car championships, 36 sprint car series championships, 13-time Pennsylvania Speed Week champ, and he has 30 Speed Week wins. He was inducted into the Sprint Car Hall of Fame back in 2009. And to be inducted, you have to be 50 years old. He is one of 4 drivers that was inducted in his first year of eligibility. And I know most of you, because I know most of you here, will know these names, but you're talking about Steve Kinzer, you're talking about Sammy Swindell, you're talking about Kenny Weld, and my husband, Freddie Rahmer. In 2012, the Area Auto Racing News was 50 years old, and they did a top 10 driver ranking. We were at the motorsports show, and they were announcing the drivers. Fritz was ranked number 6 during that 50-year career. He was the only sprint car driver that was ranked in the top 10. He has 3 Australia wins, and quite the impressive list. The enormity of it is overwhelming. When you get in your car and you drive 2 hours up the turnpike and 2 hours home, sometimes up and back, Friday night, Saturday night, and you ask yourself why. It's kept us together as a family. It wasn't easy for us to have children, and when we did, we had them all at once. And we feel that that is our biggest achievement. Freddie is a mechanical engineer. He works at Jacob Schmidt right around the corner. Brandon is a graduate of Temple University, business degree and marketing. He has his own business called Chop Designs. Couldn't be more proud of the boys. They put themselves through college. They work full-time, they race, and they have done very well for themselves. And my daughter, of course, isn't here. She's a physician's assistant. She works for an ortho doctor out of Bergen County. She was there 5 months and became the lead PA. So we're quite proud of our children. I see one of my girlfriends here, Sherry, who brought Chessie up in the lacrosse world and trained her well, and she was very successful with that in college as well. She's going to be getting married in August. And this is a shocker. My husband likes her fiance. Shocker. Just moving on to the boys quick. Brandon has had to focus on his business a lot. And Brandon is a heck of a driver. He's very smooth. He has 3 career wins, and he's consistent in his finishes. Freddie has been able to run 2 nights a week. Freddie has 40 career sprint car wins. That's a lot. He has 2 Williams Grove championships, and he was the mechanic of the year for those championships. He also has 2 Lincoln Speedway championships and mechanic of the year. Most drivers have hired mechanics. Freddie and my husband are championships at both tracks, and there were only 4 drivers to win both championships. Besides Freddie and his dad, there were 2 other drivers to do that. The history of those racetracks, I believe, stem back to 1920, if I'm correct. The other thing that my husband and Freddie share are World of Outlaw wins for father and son team. There were, I know I'm saying these names like everybody knows them, but Steve Smith and Stevie Smith, father and son, the Hawden Shields, Brent Kading, who was a good friend of ours, and his sons, and Sammy Swindell and Kevin Swindell. That's quite an achievement. And to win a World of Outlaw race at such a young age is quite impressive. That's pretty much all I have. And then I'm going to turn it over. Barbara, are you going to ask the questions?
Anybody can ask questions
Okay.
Yeah, I got into racing. My father, my uncles, and everybody was involved in it. Uncle Al, Uncle Earl, my uncle Norm McLaughlin was involved. Pete Damiani, which everybody here probably knows, right up the road. You know, Timmy Damiani, Roger Richter. If you lived around here back then, it was about racing. You know, John Haynes, everybody. You know, it was a really good time, and we had a lot of fun doing it. And like my wife said, we spent so much time together as a family. My kids never had a chance to get in trouble, so I think that was a total plus for us. But all my uncles, Uncle Al, he ran really well. Uncle Earl always had his car for him. Paul Dice, who was a local Mason, was the owner of the car for a long time. You know, my dad doing it got me into it, and I do it way more than him. I raced with Ricky. Ricky was probably a better driver than I was, but I just stuck with it longer. You know what I mean? He was smarter than me. He got out. But, you know, it's something we've enjoyed. It drives you crazy, but we enjoy doing it. And, you know, I mean, been lucky enough. I've been to Australia. I think I probably spent 6 months of my life over there. I spent 6 New Year's Eves in the Sydney Harbor in a boat. Watched the best fireworks display in the world, like I said, 6 times. Was unbelievable. Met so many good people. You know, we've been lucky enough. I mean, Kyle Larson just won the NASCAR championship. Freddie actually beat him one night at Williams Grove. You know, we all know him. Casey Kane, Tony Stewart, all them guys. So it's been a lot of fun and, you know, a lot of work. But you know, you have the 4th of July celebration around here. I have never seen it because I'm always away. You know, we've traveled all over. I've raced California, Texas, Arizona, Florida, Georgia, you know, Canada a couple times. Like I said, got to go to Australia quite a bit and had a really good time. When we started racing, me and Ricky and everybody, we would go and have more fun than you're supposed to be allowed, I can tell you. And then the racing got more serious and more expensive, and it's still a good time. I have hardly no friends outside of racing, you know, because you're always doing the racing thing. So, but a lot of good people, a lot of good help, a lot of great sponsors, and you know, that's about it. Yeah, oh yeah, yeah, obviously. You know, a lot of good supporting fans and, you know, a lot of friends through racing. So, but, you know, I don't know if the boys want to say anything or question and answers I'm good at. That's, you know, that's what I'm better at, so. Well, I was running at Grandview, and the track announcer paid them. I was running pretty good at Grandview one year, and they paid somebody to give me a sprint car ride on a Sunday night. And I drove a sprint car, and it was so much more fun than the modified for me that I said after the race, if I can't drive a modified or a sprint car next year, I'm quitting racing. Well, they did an article in a stock car magazine about me, and Joe Hars from Elma, New Jersey, had a furniture store. He seen the article, and he seen me at Syracuse, New York as a race, and he said, hey, I need you to give me a call. Well, Joe gave me a call, or I called him, and I ended up driving for him for 1 year and got into sprint cars, because if I had to run modifieds, I was quitting because they were too much work, and the sprint cars, for me personally, were way more fun. And I ended up driving for Joe, and we did okay, nothing great. Then somebody offered me what I thought was a better deal, which turned out to be the worst deal I ever got into. Somebody from New York offered me a ride and was going to do this, that, and the other thing, and by January, they were dead broke. So we had to carry the car for the whole year. We made it through, and Donnie Kreitz's mom and dad had a speed shop at the time. Donnie was a really good racer at the time as well. And they said, we'll help you keep going. You have to pay us back before anybody else gets anything out of this deal. We made the whole year, and then I think I started driving for probably Cooks or Bud Lawrence, yeah. But the whole thing was, after I drove a sprint car one time, I never wanted to run modifieds again. And modifieds are great racing. It just wasn't for me at that point after that. But it was great, and it's such a different experience. And there's so much less work. You know, to do it as long as I did it, if I had to do it on a modified, it would just wear you out. But it was the best thing that ever happened. Like I said, I got to basically run a whole career from 96 basically up until 2013. I didn't have a real job, and I sort of scammed my way through. So, anything else, Sarah? I was with a car owner that I didn't particularly, wasn't the best opportunity I ever had, and I got fired from that ride probably in 2012, and somebody gave me a ride for 2013, and I was pretty much used up. I had gotten hurt in Canada, and I was hurt pretty bad, and I came back, and I had a bad year the rest of that year. And actually, Casey Kane, when I came back, the first race I came back after being hurt in Canada, I ended up fifth at an outlaw show from the back, which was really good, but I was still messed up, couldn't see right. And Casey Kane, I talked Casey into driving my car the next night, which he ended up crashing. But I got in the 20S of Rob Sell, and the last year we won the opener. I think the last year I ran was 2013. We didn't win as many races as we were capable of winning. I just could have done a better job personally, but I was pretty much out of gas at that point. but I had went 28 years at Williams Grove. They have a race there called the National Open. It's the biggest race at that time in our area. And for anybody that don't know, Central Pennsylvania in the sprint car world is one of the best areas that you can be. You could run back in the early 90s, 2000, you could run 120 races a year. And if you race on percentage alone, you need to run volume. And our tracks pay, reasonably well compared to everybody else. But I ended up winning that race at the end of the year. I knew I was going to quit, but I tried to keep it low profile. And I had some friends in from California, and I ended up winning that race. And I remember the reaction from the crowd was unbelievable. It took 28 years to do, so they were as jacked up as I was. And then I think we ran 2 more races after that. The last race I ever ran, I think, was at Lincoln, and I think I run 3rd. And I had seen enough, and ever since then, we hired Stevie Smith, and he kept all our sponsors really interested in racing. And then we had the boys start, and to have a sprint car is a major, undertaking and an investment, and way above our means, to be honest with you. So all our sponsors have been really good and kept us going. But I don't think if I could have wrote a way to go out of racing, winning the National Open, I won the track championship at the Grove. I think I won Central PA track champion the last year. For me, personally, a goal every year is to try and win an outlaw race, and it's hard to do. And to win in one in your last year, I was 55. And I think that year, Steve Kinser's probably the biggest name in sprint car racing. I think the one night during that year I won an outlaw show, and I was the oldest guy to ever win one, and he won one later that year. It was earlier than that, and then he was the oldest guy to ever win one. So it was pretty cool, but it was a good way to end my career. So, but.
Can you tell us about how your father and your uncles got started racing?
I couldn't. I mean, but the thing, and my kids can't understand it, like Ricky and I were always best friends, and we had so much fun racing, and he would always run into me, sort of. Maybe I was running into him. But they raced, and my Aunt Helen was saying it, they raced and had fun. Today is so expensive, you can't even begin to imagine. I mean, right now, a new motor can cost you $60,000 to $70,000. So, but my dad and uncle did it. You're competitive. They were always car guys, and it was just something they did. My dad, he never won as much, but he had such a great work ethic. I got their work ethic for everything but real work. You know what I mean? And I applied it to racing, and that helped me out a lot. The what? Yeah. Racing at Grandview. I started racing at Grandview, and as far as the racing side of things go, it's the best place to learn to drive race cars for our kind of racing because it's tight, something's happening all the time. And I was fortunate, I won quite a few of the Thunder on the Hill shows and had a really good time. A lot of our friends would always be there because it was close to home, and that was always enjoyable. What's that? Oh, yeah. And at that point, my dad, myself, and Freddie, there was three generations of us winning there. As far as my enjoying, seeing the boys be successful at racing is far outweighs anything I accomplished. But it's, for me personally, I've been out there and I've been dinged up a little bit. It's hard to watch and it's scary. We ran these things called speedsters, and they didn't cost a bunch of money, and you knew you were always coming home, and you got to race with Kenny Brightbill and all that. And that was probably the most fun I ever had racing, especially with the boys, because it was way less dangerous than the cars that we run now, and it was fun, and you raced against a really good group of people at the time. So. No, I think I went to Hatfield one time, but Saratoga's way before my even time. You know, yeah. It's funny. My dad, I think he would work on the car work on it Sunday and then maybe Thursday. And for us, we work on it every day. You know what I mean? It's so much different now. It's just unbelievable. For this year? Yeah, I mean, both the boys got different rides, and I think it should be better on all of them, because for me, as the owner, you always got to worry about the dollar, so it puts extra pressure on them. Freddie, he's run for Rich Eichelberg, who's a businessman. John Haynes knows him, and he's a really good person. He's run for him twice so far this year at the end of the year, and has had pretty good success already with that. So that's looking really good. And Brandon just got a ride with a guy that has a good car as well. So I myself, you know, have the same expectation you always do, to win every race you go to, and, you know, suck it up when you don't win and come back the next night and try and win again.
As far as we just finished up on Saturday, but as far as goals for next year, someone taught me to always write down goals if they're short-term and long-term, whatever, and then somewhere you can always see it to remind yourself to keep pushing, you know, through time to get to that. But I'd say for next year, probably to try to win 10 or 15 races. You know, this year I didn't win as many as we should have, not even close to the year previous. I mean, close to the year previous or the one before that, but I'd like to win some more races. And I mean, we pass a lot of cars all the time. We just got to get positioned better for some nights. And as a driver and as a person, maybe I'm getting better and growing up with things a little bit. And just when things go bad, just rebound a little bit more and not carry it into the next week or whatever. So I think we can win 10 or 15 races with Rich and with our car some, and just looking forward to it. We ran twice there at the end of the year at Susky, and we got third and fourth, but we started back pretty far. So he's excited, and so are we and my family to race with him. It's pretty cool because he's 70 years old and I'm 25, but it's like we're just as excited. You know, it's like two different, you know, ends of the spectrum. So I can't wait, really. We just ended, so, but it'll be back before we know it.
He's usually not at a loss for words.
Where's the number 51 come from?
That was my dad's number, yeah. And, you know, I've had it for any car that I've ever owned. I've been 51 or 51Z, and, you know, Freddie runs that number now. And, you know, Freddie's going to be 8 this year, and what's your 5? 5'8". 5, yeah. So yeah, but it was my dad's number forever. You know, I don't know where he got it. You know, and I think, and I can't say for sure, A.J. Foyt was 51 for a while as well, and it might have been from that. No, we had a really good time. I mean, the one time we were in Australia, we met the Prime Minister. It was through racing, in all honesty. I've been places and seen and met people that I never would have. Freddie said about the guy that taught him about writing all the goals down. We were coming home from Williams Grove, which is 2 hours from here. Steve Williams, who was Tiger Woods' caddy, Raymond Floyd, he's a friend of ours. And he was staying at our house, and he races as well in New Zealand. And he told Freddie, for most of the ride home, gave him a talk that a sports psychiatrist you could never, you know, because Steve would tell me, you know, he'd be somewhere with Tiger, and he knew Tiger was all jacked up and had to give him a different club or tell him the length was different. But in racing, it's such a head game. And that guy, for him, Steve, to take the time to tell Freddie that, it was really cool. That was one of the perks. We met him down in, we were racing in Florida, and he was playing, I think he was with Raymond Floyd at the time, and he was on the seniors tour, and he'd come over to the races. Anytime he was close, well, he'd come over and he met him, and shoot, that's probably the early 90s, and we've been friends with him ever since. So. Yeah, it's in racing, and it's worse now than it ever was. If you can psych out the other guy a little bit by just playing games, and yeah, it's all a game. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And Ricky, he looks like he's about to fall asleep. He's usually in bed by now. I think he's 4 years older than I am, but we always had a good time. One time, and this was the one time I ran into Ricky, we were going out whitewater rafting at the Yuccogainy River, and I drove over him for the win, and we had to drive 3 or 4 hours in the same vehicle, but I told him it was his fault. It was all good.
I think speedsters that we ran were probably the closest to modifieds. They would push. You'd lift up the left rear. You could never steer them. You pretty much had to manhandle the thing to get around there. But the sprint car with power steering and everything and having a little bit more horsepower, you can turn the wheel a quarter of an inch and it would turn right, turn left, or turn left. But now we never talked. I think before we actually got into sprint cars, we actually talked about getting into late models. Or at least that was the original theory. But if sprint cars are expensive, late models are twice as bad. And actually, I'm kind of glad we didn't go that route, but because they're just as much work as a modified. But and honestly, either way, whatever direction we would have went into, the racing was still really good, whether it's late model, modified, or sprint cars. But I think the learning curve to get into a late model, to get back into a modified, versus how much they've changed over the years, getting right into a sprint car definitely was the next step.
Is Deb coming on the race family?
I do. My father is Frank Rio, part of Rio Brothers. He owned a car since 1951. And in fact, my dad was just inducted into the Reading Home of Champions 2 weeks ago, which was quite an honor for him because he's 95 years old. And we had to get the net around his neck to get him off the stage. He loved it. He started talking about when he was in World War II, and then about his racing and the drivers he liked and didn't like. But yes, in fact, my husband raced with the Turner family. They're from Ambler, PA, Harry Turner. But his father, George, and his brothers had cars at Hatfield Speedway. So my dad had raced with them, and Harry Turner is the same age as my brother. And Harry and Ricky and Fritz were best friends, and they were called the R&R Boys. Harry introduced me to Fritz one night, and it was tough for me because I wanted to go big block racing and had to decide to go watch my boyfriend at the time. And I tell this story, and if you heard it before, I'm sorry, but I was sitting with Gail in the stands one night, Turner, and there was a banner at the racetrack hanging up behind me that said, Fred, and I'll use the word stinks, but it was a different word. And I said to Gail, I said, oh, I feel sorry for that Fred guy. Who is he? And she goes, Fritzy? And I was like, what is wrong with him? Like, why doesn't anybody like them? And I soon found out, but that was my story. But yes, I do come from a racing family. We did it as, and we still do. My dad is still alive, thankfully, and my brother has a car. They don't race like they used to, but we still do it as a family. And there wasn't a weekend where my mother didn't make spaghetti for the whole pit crew, and I do it. And I don't, I go down to my mother's and father's on the weekends, but I love nothing more than being with my family.
Yeah, what is it? This, we'll be running mostly Lincoln Speedway full-time. He's related to, his name's Travis Ash. He's related to Doug Ash, Jared, JD, all them. There's like 5 different Ashes in the racing world. But he's close to my age, and he's got a pretty good passion for racing. He had his brother running for him for a while there, but I guess things got complicated and they split ways. But no, we'll be hopefully doing full-time Lincoln, on and off at Susky, on and off at the Grove. Pretty much any racetrack that we can go to, hopefully that see if we can make some money, take in for the car. But no, we got to see too what we get sponsorship-wise and what we're able to do. But as of right now, we're in pretty good shape. Got 2 cars in the shop already. Motors are back and they're mostly fresh. Don't really have to wait on too many parts, thankfully, because how things are lately here, you don't know how long you got to wait for to get things. But no, it should be a good opportunity. I'm excited. Takes the burden off my dad having to fund my deal to go racing every weekend at Lincoln. But he gave me the opportunity and everything, and I talked to him off and on, and he seems like a really nice guy. Always has really good equipment, knows how to manage a team. And he has a pretty good setup. Like, for me, it's one thing to drive the car. It's another thing to know how to work on the car, how to keep things maintained, keep things moving and stuff. Whether you own the car where, you got to be able to afford tires to go from race to race, be able to afford fuel. But he's pretty good at managing a team. And like I said, he has a really good deal going for him. Like, we don't have all the money in the world to be able to go run 100 and something races. That'd be nice, maybe if I hit the lottery or something. But, we should be pretty good, hopefully, right out the gate with what we're going to be able to do.
We sit here and just thinking about it. Ricky Schaefer lived right back here. We spent how many laps, Ricky, running around your track up there in go-karts, snowmobiles, so this area's got a lot of racers, and we had a lot of good times around here. And I think one night I was supposed to take some girl out and stayed home and went snowmobile racing. That was the end of that. You know what I mean? So, but we had a really good time and enjoyed. The best part for me about the racing is we had motorhomes, and the kids, and even my daughter says it all the time, the best time she ever had was going back. We'd been to Disney World countless times because you run every year in Florida in the winter, and it was really good, really good.
Do you remember when Mr. Damiani ran the snowmobile races in Grandview for a couple of years?
I remember him doing it, and I don't know that I ever went up, but I remember him doing it, and that's quite the endeavor back then. Well, he had a snowmobile dealership right up the road here, right? Yeah. Sold Arctic hats and. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. All the Damianis were great people, Anybody else got anything? What's that?
Like, I remember back when you were in Grandview with the Z51 and the batteries.
Oh, well, Ricky'd have been one of the biggest ones because you always wanted, when I ran modified, you always wanted to beat the guy you hung out with, you know what I mean? But probably, I would say, of all the guys that personally would get to me, Kenny Adams would probably be, he was a guy, he could do everything. I mean, and it was effortless for him. I had to work so hard to even come close to get as good as he was. And in the end, I ended up winning more races because I stayed with it. But Kenny is, I would say, a friend, a good friend as well. But like, I remember one night, we were at Susquehanna. I got in a crash on the first lap. I come in, and the guys had to do some things, put a right rear tire on and some other parts. And when I come out of the pits, it was at Susquehanna, not that it matters. I come out of the pits, and Kenny had just happened to be going by, and he went like this, that I had to go last and start last. Well, it was a 25-lap race. I started dead last, and I drove by Kenny Adams for the lead and waved to him going by, right? And I didn't care if I flipped out of the place. I was beating him no matter what. And I ended up winning the race. And Kenny and I would have a bet every week, $20, pay the guy on the front stretch if he won, which was totally humiliating, right? But I'm driving home that night, and I'm thinking to myself, and Debbie had fallen asleep, and I'm like, there's no way my car was that good. I must leave something on the table every week. But him pissing me off made the difference. And it really makes you do some soul searching. And you say, I got to try that hard every week. And somehow you think you do, but you just leave a little on the table. But Kenny Adams was one. If you know anything about our racing, obviously Donnie Kreitz was a really good competitor. Todd Schaefer, Greg Hodnut. I would say I was more friendly with Greg's mom than him. I respected Greg, and he ended up passing away at Susquehanna, but he was a rival too. But for me personally, Kenny Adams sort of got to me more than all the others. But it was a good thing because it made us both better. But that guy could do anything. I mean, he almost won the Olympics for long-range shooting. He just, anything he wanted to do, he could do, and it was effortless for him, and I had to work a million times harder. But he was probably the toughest rival I ever had for me mentally, I would say. Oh, yeah, I think I've won their biggest race 4 times. You know, the Tuscarora race, I've won that 4 times. And we never raced there much. I always liked racing the short tracks more, but Freddie was able to win some races up there as well. They changed the track now, and it's a little different. You almost gotta sort of run way past out of control, and it's a little uncomfortable to watch because it's really fast up there. You could really get dinged up in a hurry, but as a lot of tracks are, you can get hurt at Grandview. But yeah, no, I've won at Port. I've won at all the big tracks, but I enjoy the short tracks. I do enjoy Grandview and Susquehanna and that Lincoln and them places a little bit more. Yeah, won there. I know I won 4 of their biggest races and numerous other ones as well. Anybody got anything else? What's that? Yeah, Paul Lotier was a good friend, is a good friend, and he got paralyzed out at Sharon Speedway. The car you could have raced, it was just, there was a post there that obviously in hindsight shouldn't have been there, but Paul was from right down in Harleysville, and I went to school with his brother Dave, and one day, I think me and Ricky were down there and we were busting on Paul, and he had just bought in a car, a Plymouth Duster back in the day, and I think we took Ricky's sister's car and raced him down the road, to be honest with you. And we're rolling down the road, and I looked in the mirror, and Paul hit the brakes, and the brakes, something happened, and the car goes sideways this way, and then it went this way. Next thing, it shot into the woods. He hit a tree, and the car flipped, and it's spinning down the road, and I'm watching in the mirror, and all of a sudden this guy comes running out of the woods. Well, here it's Paul Lotier. He flew out of the car into the woods, got up and ran out, and then he got paralyzed in a crash out at Sharon, and it is unbelievable. But, you know, he was a good friend, and he helped us out a lot when I was in modifieds. He helped me a lot, and, you know, we won a lot of races with his help as well. So just one of them things in racing. Yeah, we were racing a race at Lincoln, and it was probably 5,000 to win or 3,000 to win, but if you chose to go last, they'd pay you 15,000 if you could win a race. Well, you wouldn't know Al Hamilton, but he was very well-to-do and a good guy and a real competitor. He said, "You're going last," and we went last and ended up winning it, and it was a pretty neat night. So that was 15 grand. So, but yeah, that was a good night. That was one of the more fun ones that we had. So, but you know, one of them good nights. What's that? Bob Stewart was. He's another one. He's actually, I guess, one of your competitors. I guess, huh, John? And he was a really nice man, or is a really nice man, and I drove for him for quite a few years as well, and we actually ran a whole TV series out in Arizona the one year, which was really a lot of fun. I mean, way more fun than you're supposed to have, I think, but I think Bob was one of the better guys to race for. They were one of the few guys, they had their own engine dyno, shock dyno. Bob, again, he was pretty well-to-do, and he would get what you needed. Didn't overspend, but I still enjoyed talking to Bob, and I would say that was probably one of the better rides I had. It was a really great opportunity. They had great people working on the car. Eddie Stauffer was the main mechanic, and he could build anything on the car, but it was right at the point where building everything yourself wasn't as important as it used to be, because now you can just call and buy anything that the best cars have, so it's just different. But it was a good ride. Bob Stewart was a good guy, and he was good to my family, as was Al Hamilton as well.
How many owners you drove for?
You know, really, I think I drove for, I don't know. I don't know the number, but almost everybody, with few exceptions, I drove for a long time. You know what I mean? And I think I drove for Al Hamilton for 5.5 years, 6 years. And in racing, that's a long time. You know what I mean? And, you know, he was a great guy to drive for. He gave you everything you ever needed. And you'd get called up to a meeting in his place in the office, and he had a big office. What do we need to win? But he gave you everything, and that's all you can ask for. But I didn't drive for that many people. Everybody I drove for, I almost enjoyed almost every one of them, you know, with very few exceptions. And we're still friends with 99% of them. All my sponsors are still on the cars for all the years. I have one guy that he drove down from Boston. What is Dave, 80 years old? All but 80 years old. He gets up at 3:30, drives down from Boston, goes to the races, and drives home and is back to Boston the next day. He walked up to me in Florida probably, I don't know, 15 years ago and said, "Fred, I'm Dave Pritchard, and I'd like to sponsor you." And I said, "Oh, yeah, cool." You know what I mean? And I thought, another lunatic, you know what I mean? And 15 years later, he's a great person. I mean, a very successful businessman and unbelievable, just a great hard worker. But everybody I've been with, I've been fortunate enough to be able to stay with for a long time. All our sponsors, all the people that we've been around. So I've been very fortunate in racing. A lot of people jump around to a lot of different rides, and I was lucky enough to stay at the same ride. And the biggest thing was being in this area was really good because there's so much racing. Yeah, I would say, I mean, I enjoyed driving for, like I said, with the exception, almost everybody I drove for. Joe Hars, who gave me my first break in sprint car racing, he's Freddie's godfather. He called me today. I would say I think the one year I won 34 races in his car. I think we won 34 out of 99 or 100 races, and it was a really good year, and they're friends till this day, and they spend time at our house over the summer. So I guess the 88H of Joe Hars, who, like I said, they had a furniture store in Elmer, and that was probably, I would say, right there with the top of them. What's that? Did your father go to school in the house we live in? Yeah, I mean, I've lived in the same house just basically my whole life, and my dad, it was a one-room schoolhouse. We still live there, and my dad bought it and made it, into a single home, and so yeah, I've been there. He went to school there, and I'm speaking at the Historic Society, so I've been around too long, I guess.
We have a picture hanging in our house with Uncle Earl, Uncle Al, and Dad, all in the same class. Okay, I do have it. Sherry.
You talk about family and how important it is to you and everything. And I have got the experience of being good friends with Dad because of Jesse. But one of the things that I remember was how you were always like making shirts and just like supporting your family. Do you have any idea how many different Rahmer 51 shirts and all that paraphernalia that you made over the years? Did you take a guess at how many different designs
Well, it's funny you say that because I think I'm on my sixth quilt of T-shirts. But when we were racing together, Fritz and I worked full time at Prudential and was in the systems in the data center. But I always had interest in marketing and promotions. And what was ironic was, and the one thing I do want to mention is I also have always been in charge of the sponsors, communicating to them, keeping them engaged every weekend, making sure that they knew where we were racing, what was going on. Hey, did you know that Fritz is, this is his, 12th feature in a row? And I always was good at that. And when he was racing, I always was involved with sales and selling his T-shirts, and until I had the kids. When he raced for Al Hamilton, for those 6 years, I had nothing to do with it. After that, I got involved in it, and I had taken a package from Prudential and didn't know what I wanted to do, and I kind of worked for somebody else, and then I went to work at Haynes and Kibble House. And I was very fortunate that I was actually in the HR department, and I was kind of sad that I was liking my job, but I wasn't loving it. And then one day, John said, I have a company that he started and his wife, and it was called Reed's Tannery. And the cool part about that was it's historical. Andreas Reed was a tanner, and John had started the business out behind his house, and they were doing promotions, and he had said that he wanted to know if I would be interested in running that, and we bought equipment with John, and now that's what I do as a business. I've been managing the Reed's Tannery promotional products for the last 12 years, and I love it. And it enables me to market the team, market the boys. But what it does is, my mother was a seamstress, and she always taught me material. She always taught me things that helped me with that. So I'm always first with my type of shirt, my type of hat. And I'm able to use that. If I make a hat for the boys, I get orders for it. So when I'm at the races, I'm looking at all the sponsors on the cars, and I go and talk to them. And that's how I get business, by doing that. So the racing has helped me promote my family, and I've kept everything of my husband and the boys. And even when they were little, I think I have every toy they ever had. But yeah, you're right, Cherry. I do have everything, and I even have all of Chessie's lacrosse shirts on quilts. But it's fun now. What's cool about the boys going into their own rides, our sponsors are still staying with us. The return on the investment is incredible because now they have Flow Racing, they have Dirt Vision, they see their cars. They see, their driver getting out of their car with their uniform on with all of the patches, and it promotes their, their businesses. And racers and NASCAR racers, they're dedicated to the drivers, the sponsors that are on cars. I knew that I would only buy Tide because I liked, I think it was Ricky Rudd or whatever, he had a Tide car, but people are very loyal to their sponsors. So I'm still involved with that until the boys, their girlfriends take over. Hint, Aaron. But yeah.
I think Ricky should come up and say a few words because he was sleeping back there. No, anybody got anything else?
Can each person give a favorite memory? Or any favorite memory?
For me, personally, on my side of racing, probably winning the National Open the last year I was, caused a lot of friends, and truthfully, as a racer, obviously you enjoy the fans and all that, but the fan reaction that night for me, because I've always been the bad guy, and it's a job somebody got to do, and I did it pretty good. So, but that night they forgot I was the bad guy, and that was really good. Seeing the boys win, seeing Freddie win an outlaw show. If you don't understand our racing, the Outlaws are the marquee, and you only get so many chances to do it in our area because they travel all over the country. So seeing the outlaw win that he got was probably the most emotional I ever got at the races, and that would be one of them.
Sorry. I would say, minus the couple wins that I got, I'd probably say back, around 2004, 2005, when my dad was driving for Joe Hars. A little different atmosphere at the races. Everybody had motorhomes. Everybody stayed after the races were done. It was just totally different atmosphere. Nowadays, as soon as the race is over, everybody already has their car loaded up and they're ready to go to the car wash or get prepared for the next day. But back then, you got to see everybody at the races. You got to spend time with them. Everybody stayed, and I was too young to party, which kind of sucked. But to me, it was a good atmosphere. It was cool. There was a lot, like racing to me around that time. I think especially for sprint car racing was definitely probably at its peak, and it's still good today. Don't get me wrong. It's just different. Like there was a lot more car owners around. There was a lot of new teams coming. People coming to the races. The races were always packed, whether it was a local event or, World of Outlaw or All-Star event. But, yeah, I'd say probably when I was a little bit younger. There was a lot less stress, too, with going to the races and not having to worry about running good or, making sure you don't wreck the car or anything. And after the race, I could go to bed. Now I got to drive 2 hours home, get the car washed early in the morning, and then start prepping for next week. But yeah, I'd probably say that would be my best time.
Yeah, I guess probably the one outlaw race so far at Lincoln, that was probably the best one so far, and some all-star races and some other stuff like that. But sometimes the best nights is when you could start in the back and run up through the field. That is probably just as much fun and memorable as winning some of the bigger races. But it's funny, like my dad and my mom and Brandon said about staying in the motorhome every weekend when we were growing up and stuff, and that was the most fun. But I remember sometimes we'd pull out of the driveway and we were like 10 or 12 or something, and Dad was racing full time at the time, and we'd pull out of our driveway, and before we got to Shelley Road, we'd be listening to Alan Jackson and stuff, and the motorhome was 42 foot long, and he'd be bitching at us to get in the back because he's already annoyed at, on the way there. So, but no, we had a really good time together, and that was some of the most fun we had was as a family. We'd go there on Friday and race Friday, Saturday, Sunday, whatever, and we'd hang out afterwards Sunday and come home Sunday at some point, and just good time being with everyone. And my sister lives a little bit away now, but most of the time we're still always together as a family, so that's pretty cool. We get to do it together, and up until this point, I got to race with Mom and Dad and Brandon around helping, and a couple of our good friends. And everything I've done as a driver so far anyway has been with my dad, which is really cool. And it's weird helping him, since I was like 10 or so, it meant a lot to when he would win races or whatever and accomplish things. And then when I got the chance at it, it means even more to know what he did, being in those shoes. So it's just all good, and we got a lot more good chances to have a good time and be successful. So just looking forward to that.
Freddie. Things you say about remembering. I remember one Friday afternoon, it looked like it was going to rain around here. It was toward the end of the year, and there was a race going to be in Hagerstown, Maryland, and it looked like it was going to rain out. So one of my friends called me and said, "Hey, there's a race in Dallas, Texas. Why don't we go to that?" Right? And I called the guy that we were driving for at the time. I said, "Hey, is it okay if we go to Texas?" And I picked Freddie up at school at probably 11 o'clock, told him they had a doctor's appointment. We left, and this is the truth. We left and drove straight to Dallas, Texas, got a hotel, got a shower, went to the racetrack, raced, went back, got a shower, got back in the truck, and was home Sunday night. And of all the crazy things, that might have been one of the crazier, because we were coming across Tennessee, and I'm driving the truck, and it was a tractor trailer at that point, and it was like, oh man, that might be the dumbest thing I've ever did. The one thing that when you sit here and think about memories, we were driving for Joe Hards at the time, and we went out, and one of the biggest races of the year is the Knoxville Nationals, and we won our preliminary night. And our preliminary night, we won, and then it started raining. So we're out, there's an area right off the fourth turn where all the motorhomes, and they get a lot of people for our kind of racing at this race. And Tony Stewart was out there, and Casey Kane, and they're all out at our motorhome. And we were drinking and having a pretty good time. And one of our real good friends, Jimmy Carr, his dad makes this fruit, and it's not the best fruit for you. Well, we're driving home on Sunday, and Tony Stewart's running Watkins Glen, and he ended up winning. And they said he's running with the flu. Well, I can tell you for a fact he didn't have the flu, without question, because he was there on Saturday night. He has a jet, flew to Watkins Glen, and he was hungover bad. That was the problem he was having. It was a good time. We've been very fortunate in racing, and like I said, we stuck to it longer than a lot of guys do. But all the good memories we have, we had together for one, and got to meet a really good group of people and had some really good times. But there's give and take to everything. But I would say it was pretty much all positives. Yeah, Speedy was there with Haddon probably at that point. Man, I'll tell you, that was one of the better times we ever had. I mean, we were in Australia racing, and we would stay in the Sydney area, outside of Sydney, and we were racing up at Surfers Paradise, and we went up to Surfers, and it rained out. I remember it rained out at Parramatta, which is the track we were going. So we left early to go up to Surfers, and we're driving up there, and I had my own cars, and I had another guy driving. I shipped cars over to Australia to race, and what you would do back then is somebody would pay to ship your cars over, and then you would work it out and do this, that, and the other thing. But we're driving up there, and we pulled into a service station. It was probably over New Year's, and they call them servos. I pull in the servo and say, hey, where can we get a room? He said, where are you going? I said, Surfers. Well, Australia back then wasn't like around here. You get in a car, you're going a distance before you get a hotel. Well, we stayed at this place. It was called Coffs Harbour, I remember it. And we rip in there, and they had a room. And it was a fancy place. And the room cost me $400 a night, right? So for $400, I was going to get up in the morning and see before we had to leave. And I'm walking around, and I see something out of the corner of my eye, and I'm like, what was that? And I don't like reptiles at all, right? Well, it was this lizard about this long, right? Well, I went back to the room. I said, hey, we got to roll. I said, we got to go. So we went up there, and we raced up there, and we had to leave right after the race because we had to get back to Sydney. They were doing a harbor cruise, and we were the guests, right, on this harbor cruise. Well, as we're leaving, we're in a tractor trailer, and the alternator goes out of the tractor trailer. And a stack of Bibles, and this is the place for it. But we're rolling down through, no alternator, no battery. We have a flashlight out the truck window the whole way home. I mean, and we're talking, I'd say 10 hours. I mean, and you couldn't do it here, obviously, but it was some crazy stuff. I'll tell you, we had a really good time. It's crazy.
I want to just say something. You know, he says that he's the bad guy and somebody had to be it, but when he would race, he was relentless with not giving up. Of his career wins, you're handicapped when you're racing. The more you race, the better you do, the further back you start. His wins all came from 12th. To win a feature from 12th position every week is not easy to do. And he did it every weekend. And you never gave up. Sometimes he would pass the leader on coming off a 4. And because I would be in the stands, I would find out why somebody didn't like him. Oh, well, he passed my cousin coming off a 4, and he did a slider on him. I mean, that's the reason why people didn't like him, because he was beating someone that led for 23 laps, and here comes Fred Rahmer. He wins a race. That, I think, has been the most enjoyable thing because it's the outcome of his hard work. It's making sure you have all your parts maintenance, your car's maintenance, you're practicing how to fix your car under red flags. I mean, they change engines in what, 16 minutes? I don't even know. Like, take out the trash? I don't think so. But we can change an engine. They could walk by the trash bag 4 times. But that engine's changed. Sorry. I'm just saying that it's that hard work ethic that he's comes from being a Rahmer. I also have to say it's also being a Rio in there too. But that is one thing. When my father-in-law used to come to my house, I'd say, Dad, I have an electrical problem. He'd fix it. Dad, can you do this? He could do anything. He only lived to be 64 years old, but I have more memories of my father-in-law. I wish he could have met my kids. But one of the things was, he was always down in that garage, and he had all his friends there. My husband's the same way. You look in this room, Ricky, Shorty, Bird, everybody's here, same friends, and that's a lifetime. That is an achievement. That is what I love the most about our family, is that hard work ethic and the friendship community. I try to teach my kids every year, you give back. We support every year and make sure that the race team is giving, doing, collecting, and that's part of what they're going to continue long after we're not going to the races. That's what's most important. But it's the hard work that got him all those wins. Sorry, that's my soapbox.
I have a question for Brandon and Fred. Since your grandfather and your Uncle Frank have a modified, your dad touched on the modifieds earlier, would you ever consider sitting in that car and going competitively racing once, twice, either of you? And Debbie, how would you feel about them driving for your father?
I mean, it's definitely like not past my mind trying it. I definitely think they put on great racing. It definitely, like for a sprint car, you're always leaning left, and like you said, the car's turning a lot easier. Modified and stuff, you're rolled up, and it'd be a different feel. But yeah, I mean, if I'd be given the opportunity and stuff, it'd be cool to try. I definitely wouldn't want to say no to something like that.
Yeah, I would probably do it. I mean, I would practice it at least. I don't know about racing because to realistically have a good chance of, at this point, I would like to be competitive and have a chance to win every time I go to the races. So I don't think I would realistically have that chance to run the modified. But I don't know. I think my pop, even at 95, would be tough to drive for now. So I'd probably even let that go.
Fred,
Sure.
with the sprint car, you were the invert was 12. At Grandview, you used to start where to come from the back to where?
Yeah, I think we'd have to start, 20th back then, Rick?
20th or 21st.
Yeah, you would start.
And the reason a lot of people didn't like you, because in that bull ring, the only way to get to the front, sometimes you had to tap them and just slide them up out of your way and drive by.
Yeah, that's.
And you did that a lot.
I
You were
did.
going to get there. To the front.
Yeah, somebody just told me the reason I drove like I did in sprint cars because I started in modified. So, but you still got to be able to finish. So you can't be real rough. And a sprint car is a pretty delicate car. But I tell you this, I was glad I got out of modifieds, but I probably had the most fun I ever had in racing running up at Grandview. We'd go up there, and if it rained out, we had just as much fun if we raced. It was a really good time, and it was a really great place to learn to drive. Way better than any big track. You really get good at.
You moved cars. You weren't blatantly crashing people out, but you did.
Yeah, yeah.
Give them a little bit of you'd give them a little tap to send them up.
Yeah, I remember one night it was a modified show. It was a mod car show, and Kenny Brightbill's probably like the best guy ever, but he's a big guy, and I hit him and he got a flat, and I thought for sure I was going to die that night. But he was pretty cool about it, and that was a pretty good memory there.
In all your years in racing, what positive changes to the sport have you liked, the ones that you least like?
Well, for me, being an old guy, I think the biggest thing that hurt racing for me is social media. You know what I mean? With all the Twitter. I mean, in all honesty, back in the day, if you did something wrong, somebody'd poke you in the nose and straighten you out. Now they just go on Twitter and it goes on and on and on. And I don't know. I guess the biggest thing, though, is it just got so expensive. I mean, to run like we do, and obviously between sponsors and what the car takes in, it's $50,000 a year in tires. You know what I mean? Just to race. And it's just so much money to go and field a car and sit there and act like you're having fun, unless you're a millionaire. And it's pretty tough to do, but that's what you do. And we were lucky enough to get through it through all the sponsorship we have and all that. But it is very stressful. And back in the day, you could go, I remember, I won what was the biggest race at Grandview, the 76er, and I didn't have no money, and I went up there and I told the guy that had the tire truck, I said, hey, I'm gonna buy this tire. I said, but if I'm starting way back, I'm going to bring it back. Well, I think I started 30th or 33rd or something somehow. And I said, I'm not putting a new tire on. Well, I won the thing on the old one. I was just lucky, you know. But back then you could do that. You can't do that. You got to be on your game and spending money all the time. So I guess like everything, money wrecks everything.
I don't have a question, but I just want to say something. About 6 years ago, when I met my husband, he brought me to my first sprint car race, and you won there that night. And I didn't even know what a sprint car was. So after all these years, and your wife coming to the races, seeing how bubbly she was and how supportive she was of you, and your sons following in the footsteps, I just find your family so humble, like looking at all this and seeing all you've done, how humble you are, and how you help people, and I'm just blessed, we're blessed to know you. So I just thought I'd have to say that. Thank you.
Is that it?
I'd like to just say, it was very hard trying to get you to get here, but I'm glad you did, because I really enjoyed meeting your sons and your wife, and I'm glad you came. I really enjoyed it.
Well, I appreciate you having us.
Fred,
We have a
I think I'm fortunate that I saw your dad race. I saw you race, and we were up at the Honing Valley one time when your dad was racing. I was sitting in the stand with you and your sister, and your dad came out for the feature race, and you were sitting there, just a little bit of a guy, and he says, "Oh man, he put a right there front shock on me," and I thought, really? But the way you picked things out, and I was fortunate to see all of you race tonight. I feel very happy for that, Fred. I really do.
Yeah, we have a lot of friends that have seen a lot of stuff, and you know, through our family. And my dad taught me a lot about how to work on the cars. And like I said, he didn't race as much, but he taught me, and the boys sort of picked up on it as well. And you know, we're again very fortunate.
I think that we that live in Upper Salford, we sometimes forget what a wonderful place this is based upon the people that we have here. I just want to pigtail off of what you said, because the humility that was here this evening. And you just think about, this is one story. And as a member of the Historical Society, I've got to tell you, the longer we're in this, the more and more stories we find like this. And these stories need to be told. And to be honest with you, we need more volunteers. Volunteers to help us videotape, volunteers to help us organize things, get in touch with people, make these connections, to let people see what this country really was based upon. It's based upon the people that are here. It's based upon your dad and your uncle and all the friends and family that are here. And we're losing sight of that. And I think that we have a place to stand up for the things that we believe in. And as a person that's been involved in voting, I've got to say, I'm so proud of how Upper Salford has come out to vote. Whichever way you vote is up to you, but we do vote. And I want to say, please come out and volunteer. This is important. And we have a sign up for you to do that. Please go and pick up some of the free materials we have, which are leftovers. We just have too much of it. And just share the wealth. So thank you